My wife refuses to stop hoarding animals. It's getting so bad, I might have to call CPS on her for the sake of our kids. It's 6 a.m., and the roosters have been crowing non-stop for the last 2 hours in our sunroom adjacent to our bedroom. I'm now sitting in the basement as flies swarm around me, and I've given up swatting them because there's too many to bother. The basement is the area of the house with the least amount of flies. On top of the rooster noise is the cackle of male quail that reside in our living room. They live in the base of 3 cages that are filled with budgies and cockatiel. When I wake up, I remember to put on my slippers, and I hope I get to them before stepping in dog urine or fresh dog poop. Our carpet in our master bedroom is saturated in dog urine with many spots that haven't dried out yet. Yesterday, my wife bought our daughter a new tortoise and a frog. The tortoise will be added to the aquarium with our bearded dragon. The bearded dragon, which is often is free to roam the house because my wife feels it will be happier. It is free to poop on our furniture or floor, or where it was left out last. As I sit here in my basement, the one place where I do not allow any pets, I'm listening to a rabbit thumping its paws on the floor above me, or it's the sound of it biting and ripping apart our wall or furniture. I'm not sure which noise it is, but I don't care anymore. We have at least 6 rabbits. Their little claws make a loud scraping and tapping noise as they scurry and hop across our laminate floors. The main level of our home is littered in rabbit droppings. The droppings get pushed to the side as our 4 children and us inadvertently kick them around while walking through the main level of our home. The dogs won't likely get let out this morning to go to the bathroom. The smaller dog doesn't even obey the command to go out anymore. He just stares at you confused by your directive. If he does go outside, he just comes back in to find a place to poop and pee in one of our bedrooms. Our backyard doesn't have much dog shit because it's mostly in our bedrooms. It will stay there for days on end because there is no expectation that it shouldn't be there. The new smell from the giant rug I bought for the basement has worn off. It smelled like glue and dye, and it drowned out the odors from the dozen chicken that reside in our family and living room. They live in a couple 36-inch fabric pop-up enclosures filled with pine shavings. It is saturated with chicken shit and urine and has soaked into our oak hardwood floors, permanently damaging them. The stench is eye-watering. We have a lot of feathered friends here. In our master bedroom are 3 more cages with a variety of exotic birds that sing loudly all day long and leave a permanent mess of seeds on the floor around the cages. They are free to roam, and so our room has dropping along our bed's headboard, on our pillows, along the sides of the doors where they perch, in our bathroom mirrors and down our shower curtains. Our sunroom has 30-plus chickens, and about 8 or 10 of them are roosters, and the roosters crow all day. This is where the flies breed. They come in through the 40-year-old sliding door that is often left open. This door separates the sunroom from our living area and our kitchen. The flies swarm in, and at any given time there are dozens of flies in our living space. The heat and humidity bake the sunroom floor, which is covered in chicken shit and urine, and the odor spreads through the house. Our house is in a suburban neighborhood. We do not live on a farm. In addition to these animals, we have 2 pet rats. They are sweet, but as you would expect, their cage is not well maintained and it stinks 90% of the time. Our boys' room has a snake and axolotl aquarium. One of our daughters has an algae-covered fish aquarium that we fill with water whenever we hear the filter screech because the water evaporated too low. She also has an unkept cage with a hamster that is rarely played with. Right now I'm listening to the mice eat through the foam board insulation in my basement. I want to get rid of them, but it's challenging with all the access to feed throughout the house. They seem to be breeding and entering through the home at a faster pace than they can be exterminated. I am not a pet person, and this life is driving me nuts. My wife is a pet hoarder and has ADHD. Our backyard is a ghost town of quail cages from last year when she was really into quail breeding, and we had over 150 living in our backyard. Now there remains broken and half-built cages and mounds of shavings and wood chips that she intended to use as bedding. Scattered in random places in our backyard are household garbage bags of chicken shit. When you try to lift them, they fall apart because they weigh 30 to 40 pounds, and the bags have deteriorated from the sun. When challenged, she seems to delight in the frustration it causes me because she is not happy in our marriage. It seems that accumulating animals is bringing her little bits of dopamine with each acquisition. I'm tired of living like this, and I don't know what to do. Our children think this behavior is acceptable, and they often chide at me for not being on board with the animals. They say I'm not a pet person. It's true that I'm actually not a pet person, but what we having going on here is irresponsible, unsanitary, and illegal. This is pet cruelty and normalizing neglect of animals. Edit. People think this is a poop post, but it's real. I'm not uploading pics for privacy, but it's genuine. I wrote it in this style just to express everything because it's distressing and aggravating, and I haven't expressed it to anyone. I'm seriously asking for advice. It's slipped out of control. The amount of pushback from my wife when I address the problems creates a lot of tension and distresses the children. She just keeps bringing home animals. The last time I threatened to rehome the chickens that she was keeping in the house, she became extremely angry and combative. She rehomed them, but not after a slew of insults and claiming I was being totally unreasonable. Then she just slips back into the same behaviors because she never believed it was a problem in the first place. We've had company come to our house, but no one has called CPS or animal control yet. Seeing all these reactions has me realizing just how bad it is from an outside perspective, and a CPS call is a serious possibility, and that is terrifying. End edit. Update, 1.5 years later. Some of you may remember my post venting and looking for advice on what to do in regards to an extreme animal hoarding situation with my wife. Dozens of chickens residing in the home and a variety of animals roaming outside of cages in the home, feces, and a rampant mice infestation. After posting, I sought therapy and started getting my bearings straightened out. In the midst of setting firm boundaries and beginning the work to clean up literally 2 tons of chicken shit, sand and pine shavings, and resolving the rodent problem, a call to CPS was made by a third party and an investigation ensued. Believe it or not, by that time, much of the situation was resolved, animals rehomed, home cleaned and sanitized. Nothing came of the CPS investigation, and it was pretty quickly closed out. However, the relationship was essentially permanently damaged as my wife continued to deny the problem was out of hand. Deep resentment developed towards each other. Fast forward nearly 12 months, and my wife requested a divorce. We are now separated, awaiting an official legal divorce. I have moved into a very nice home and have the kids 50/50ths. My physical and mental health has dramatically improved. My kids now have an organized and clean haven. They seem happy. It seems inevitable she may lose custody of the kids at some point altogether. I'm hoping she can keep things in check, but due to the constant denial that there was a problem, it will most likely repeat. I may have no choice but take steps to ensure the children's safety at some point, further disrupting the children's lives from their otherwise loving mother. Limitations on pet quantities and cleanliness standards are written into the divorce settlement agreement. By the way, wife has been in therapy for a couple years in the midst of the hoarding. I guess you could say the therapist was either not savvy to the situation or enabling to an irresponsible level. I'm leaning towards the latter. She became more and more emboldened that I was causing her problems as opposed to looking inward. Her therapist seemed to fuel the delusions as far as I could tell. Anyway, thanks for all your advice and getting me to wake up to the madness I contributed to through inaction. Update 2. I called CPS and am having regrets about it. My soon-to-be ex-wife has a bit of an animal obsession, but otherwise is a loving and attentive mother. We share 50/50 custody of 4 children. When we split up last year, I had worked really hard to get the house cleaned up, helped to rehome dozens of animals and eradicate a mice infestation before moving out. Since then, she has collected dozens of animals again, and the home reeks of animal urine. My oldest child has reported that the mice have returned. There is so much animal feed around the property and inside the home that wild mice have endless food supplies. The dogs are not potty trained, and every caged animal cannot be cleaned regularly enough to keep the odors at bay. When I got the kids for the week, all their belongings, clothing had the strongest pungent odor of dirt and urine. My home is clean and smells fresh, and the kids' belongings made my whole house stink. 2 of my kids are wearing the same clothes day and night for multiple days at a time. I called CPS based on my attorney's advice, and I feel awful about it. It feels and looks vindictive, even though that is not my intent. I feel like garbage and like I'm betraying my kids' mom's trust. I want to co-parent amicably, and I feel like this will take away from that. At the same time, she has a problem that is interfering with raising our children in a safe and sanitary environment. Also, my kids love having all the animals. Granted, they love them, but they don't recognize the amount of time and cost to properly care for them. They just like the excitement of having a bunch of pets/animals. This is going to also strain my relationship with the kids to a degree. They don't realize that 1, the animals cannot possibly be cared for adequately. 2, that they are going to school stinking to high heaven. 3, that the home is a health concern for them. 4, they see me as the mean dad that wants to take away all their precious animals which are a part of the family. Part of me is just scared of the my SDBXW. Like actually afraid for my safety, lol. I don't know if she knows yet, and part of me wants to go over to her house and help her again clean up and tell her again to rehome the animals. I know this is not realistic as it was the primary source of our arguing in our home when we were together. I told her before moving out that I would always expect that her home be sanitary and not overrun by pets again, but that I would be amicable and fair in our divorce process. Now it just feels like I'm being petty in the process of a difficult divorce, even though logically it's not true, but I can't help shake a yucky feeling about calling CPS. Update 3. I continued feeling uneasy all day and a bit panicked that before CPS came that she would be able to conceal, hide, or talk her way out of the situation. I started feeling like I would come out looking worse and the kids would not get a clean home out of the call. CPS talked to all of my kids while at school today. My 3 little ones all reported that they are all fine from what I could tell. I did not pry or ask for more details of their conversation, but just generally asked if the interview was okay and how they felt about it. They all seemed fine and like it was discreet and no big deal. However, my oldest child's visit from the agent was separate as he goes to middle school. He spilled all the beans and complained heavily about the unsanitary conditions in great detail. I did not tell him, warn him, or coach him in any way whatsoever. In fact, I try to not even complain about the home to them, as there is nothing they can do about it, and it therefore would not be helpful. It would only cause them stress. He detailed that he asked his mom to buy a new $10 shirt, and she told him no, she doesn't have the money. He then told the CPS agent that 2 days later, he saw her come home with tons of new chickens and animal supplies. Ouch. I'm saddened that he has been living in those conditions. I feel bad that their mom was probably humiliated by that story being retold to her. My son corroborated every complaint. The only reason I know what he told the agent was that their mom called him tonight and was quizzing him on his interview. I overheard everything he said as I was cleaning the kitchen, and he was right there boldly telling his mom all the things he told the agent. I didn't even know he was interviewed today, as we had a full afternoon of driving to kids' activities and making dinner, rushing to do all the parenting things. Anyway, I am relieved that there was corroboration, and it sounds like this may light a fire under their mom to again make some changes. I feel like this could end up being a regular cycle in the years to come. I hope she hangs in there, finds the courage to recognize there is a legitimate issue, and work to get better. I haven't been reached out to by CPS yet, but I suspect to get a call soon, and I hope they are able to convince her that changes have to be made. Update 4. After CPS wrapped up their interviews with the kids, I got a call later that evening. They wanted to do an official visit to my ex-wife's house the next day. I braced myself, knowing full well this was either going to light a fire under her or light the entire situation on fire. The next morning, I received a text from my ex. Thanks for calling CPS. You won't like what happens next. Chills. Literal chills. I spent the entire day with a pit in my stomach, wondering what she meant by that. I tried to go about my workday, but my mind was spinning. Did she know I was the one who called? I mean, it wasn't exactly hard to figure out, but still, I thought we could maybe, just maybe, get through this without a nuclear explosion. Wrong. When CPS arrived at her place, I got another call. This time, it was my oldest son, whispering frantically into the phone. Dad, there are chickens in the attic. Let me backtrack. Apparently, my ex, in an absolute panic at the thought of CPS showing up, had moved animals into the attic. The attic, people. I had no idea this was even an option she would consider, but here we are. Quail, chickens, and some rabbits had been relocated. Some of the smaller animals, like the rats and hamsters, were crammed into a bathroom closet. The CPS worker wasn't fooled. They saw the signs right away: feathers, droppings in places where they shouldn't be. And then, like something out of a movie, they heard the faint clucking from above. Yep, that's right. They found a rooster in the attic. At this point, I thought things couldn't get more absurd. But oh, they did. During the visit, my ex lost it. She started ranting about how I was trying to sabotage her life, claiming that the animals were all rescues and temporary guests. When the CPS worker pointed out the obvious, like the fact that there were literal chickens stuffed into the rafters, she accused them of exaggerating the situation. It got worse. She flat out refused to rehome the animals, saying it was her right to keep them because they were her family. She claimed I was poisoning the kids' minds against her, and she wouldn't let CPS force her to get rid of any animals. That's when things took a really dark turn. CPS is now recommending a court-appointed guardian for the kids, and there's talk about emergency custody. My lawyer called me as soon as this was put on the table, saying that we need to prepare for the possibility that my ex might lose custody altogether if she doesn't cooperate. And now I'm sitting here, in my clean, quiet house, feeling like I've unleashed something I can't control. The kids, despite everything, are devastated. They love their mom. They love the animals. The oldest is confused. The younger ones are upset, and I feel like I'm being pulled in every direction. I'm terrified that if she keeps doubling down on this whole animals over everything thing, I'm going to have to pick up the pieces of their broken relationship with her. At the same time, I can't let them live in filth. I can't let them breathe in the stench of ammonia and feces. Or let them wear the same urine-soaked clothes day in and day out. But here's the kicker. As angry as I am, part of me still feels bad for her. This obsession with animals is clearly something way deeper, and she's not facing it. She's spiraling, and I don't know if she even can stop. It's a mess, a giant, stinking mess, and I have no idea where it's going to end. When I put the kids to bed tonight, my oldest son asked me, "Dad, what happens if Mom loses us?" I didn't have an answer for him. I still don't. But what I do know is that this isn't going to end cleanly. And as for that text she sent me, I have a bad feeling she wasn't bluffing. Update 5. Alright, here we go. This is the update I never thought I'd have to write. It's been a whirlwind, and it feels like I've lived a year in the span of a few days. But before I dive in, I need you to understand something. I didn't want any of this to end this way. I thought I could manage the chaos, keep things from completely falling apart. I was wrong. So, the day after CPS's attic discovery, my phone starts buzzing nonstop. It's my lawyer, calling to let me know the judge had scheduled an emergency hearing for custody. It was happening faster than anyone expected. It seems the combination of the animal hoarding, the conditions the kids had been living in, and the CPS report had put everything into overdrive. I don't know how she did it, but somehow my ex got wind of this, and that's when all hell broke loose. I get home from work that evening, thinking I'd pick up the kids like usual. I'm exhausted mentally and physically, just bracing myself for whatever fallout is coming next. But when I pull into my driveway, I see a car parked in front of my house. Not just any car. Her car. She never comes here. Ever. We have a strict, neutral ground agreement for pickups and drop-offs to keep things civil. So, the sight of her beat-up sedan sitting there like a threat, parked right in front of my door, had my heart racing immediately. Something was off. As I walked up, I saw her sitting in the driver's seat, windows rolled down, but she wasn't moving. She was just staring. The second I got close enough, she flung open the door and started yelling. And I mean screaming. "How dare you? How could you betray me like this?" she shrieked, her voice cracking, wild-eyed like I'd never seen her before. She accused me of trying to destroy her, saying that I was turning the kids against her, that I had some grand master plan to ruin her life and steal her family. There was no reasoning with her. She was unraveling right in front of me, and the more I tried to stay calm, the more she spiraled. "You called CPS on me. You're stealing my kids," she screamed, stepping out of the car and getting in my face, waving her arms. She was crying no, sobbing, and in that moment, I realized just how deep she was in. She'd lost control, not just of the house or the animals, but of reality. I stood there, helpless, trying to keep the situation from escalating. But then, out of nowhere, she says, "You want the animals gone? Fine. You'll never have to worry about them again." Then she rushed back to her car and drove off before I could even say a word. That's when I really started to panic. I called her phone. No answer. I called my lawyer, trying to figure out what to do next. The hearing was the next day, and I needed to keep things together for the kids' sake. But something about the way she left something in her eyes told me this wasn't going to end with just a court decision. A few hours later, I get a call. Not from her, not from the kids, but from the neighbor. "I think you should come over to her place," the neighbor said in a low, urgent voice. "You're not gonna like what you see." When I arrived at my ex's house, the scene was straight out of a nightmare. The backyard, the same one once littered with cages, animal droppings, and broken enclosures, was empty, completely barren. Every single cage, pen, and enclosure had been tossed, shattered, or piled up in one giant heap of wreckage in the center of the yard. I didn't even know where the animals were at first, until I started hearing the faint clucks and squeaks from inside the house. She brought them all inside. Not just a few. Every single animal. The living room, the kitchen, the hallways were crawling with them, chickens clucking wildly, dogs barking, rabbits skittering around the floors. There was birdseed everywhere, feathers stuck to the walls, urine pooling in corners. The stench hit me like a freight train the second I walked through the door. It was absolute chaos. And in the middle of it all, standing amidst the wreckage, was my ex, holding one of the chickens like it was her lifeline. She looked at me completely broken and whispered, "You wanted them gone. Well, they're not leaving. Not ever." I stood there, completely stunned. There was nothing left to say. Nothing I could say. This was it. The final breaking point. The next morning, the emergency custody hearing happened, and as expected, the judge granted me temporary full custody. CPS had recommended it based on the unsanitary conditions and the interview with my oldest son. I'd never seen my ex so quiet. She just sat there, numb, not even trying to argue, not even acknowledging me. I couldn't believe it. I walked out of that courtroom with the kids, knowing full well that this wasn't over, but also knowing that I had to protect them. And now, here I am. My house is full of life, but not the chaotic, animal-infested kind. The kids are here, safe, clean, and for the most part happy. They're adjusting to the new normal. They still ask about their mom, and I make sure they see her, but things are different now. It's supervised visits, and they're limited. As for my ex, she's in a rehab program for hoarding. The animals were confiscated, the house was condemned, and she was ordered to clean up her life literally and figuratively if she ever wants to regain even partial custody. I don't know if she'll make it through, to be honest, but I'm hopeful. For the kids' sake, I have to be.